every time that I'm on the side of the stage and then I look at the crowd and I see the fans singing back the words to the audience, I'm like, oh my God, just a few months ago or however long ago, they didn't know this song and now they literally know every single lyric to this song. And that's something that I helped create, So like that, to me, watching fans, like that's awesome.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Have a Map, a DIM Events podcast. I'm going to be your host today, Brett Corona. I'm a broadcast journalism intern with DIM Events, and we also have Jack Stebbins here, our co-host. Want to introduce yourself?
Hi, how you doing? I'm a marketing intern for DIM.
Awesome. All right. So today we have an awesome guest with us. She is a music executive, Jazmine Valencia. Do you want to share a little bit about what you do and how you've gotten here in your whole career?
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here. Yeah, so my name is Jazmine Valencia. Currently, I run JV Agency. We're a music marketing firm based out of LA and New York. I've been in the music industry for a long time now. I started out as an intern at Island Def Jam. I actually started with MySpace pages, if you guys remember those, kind of barely. I started running, actually, as an intern, I started running the artist MySpace pages. I started with Mariah Carey's. I was running her page and, me and my friends were always the top 8 of all, Rihanna, JC, all the top 8 friends. That was the cool feature in MySpace, right? Being a top friend. So I started doing that as an intern and during the summer before my last year of college, and I had to go back to finish school. And when I graduated, I got a job at Def Jam, so I moved to New York and kind of worked my way through like each position in the digital marketing department there, as manager, director, etc. And then a few years ago I decided, I've been through all the positions there that, I learned so much and got to work with so many amazing people and artists and creatives I kind of decided to start my own company. Like, it wasn't a really well thought out plan. It just kind of happened on its own and just kind of like kept growing and growing to where we are now today, that we're able to, be in 2 different states and work with so many amazing artists. It's definitely been a journey. That's the short version.
It's really cool. So you said you started out as an intern at Island Def Jam. So what made you start that? And even before that, was music like a big part of your life in the first place?
So it's interesting. I can't play any instruments or sing or anything like that. I'm not gifted and talented in that way. But I've always grew up around music. My dad is actually a drummer. And he was a successful drummer at a young age with a big band in Europe. I always grew up going to concerts, was being around music. I have an older brother, so from him I would listen to hip hop. From my dad, I would get the rock side of it. So I was always surrounded by music, and I would go to like every show. There was a show, I was always there. So that was my passion of music, just on that end. And then I started going to college for finance and business school, not realizing that I could do a career in music just because I didn't know how to play an instrument or I can't sing. So I didn't think that I could have a career in music without being talented in that way. And a friend of mine actually discovered it was a master's of business program, like an MBA focusing in the music industry. And she's like, oh, this is like right up your alley. Like, you should check it out. So I did. I checked it out, and like everything that the curriculum and the program had, I was like, oh my God, this sounds great. Like, I hadn't realized, and I didn't know that could be a career in the music industry and the business side of it. I talked to the professors that run the program, and it was great. So I did the program, and it was a 2-year MBA program focusing in the music industry and the business side of it, which is great because I got to learn about contracts in the music industry and publishing. And at the school, I went to Florida Atlantic University in Boca Raton, Florida, and they had a student-run record label. So I became the president of the record label, and we put out albums and concerts, and I was like in charge of all of that, which I love putting all that stuff together. So it was an early kind of training into like what the real world, what I do now, obviously they're in a much more smaller scale. So yeah, so that's kind of how I got into it. And while I was doing that program, it was like, okay, how do I get a job, after I finish, everybody in college, that's kind of like the idea, like graduate and have a job. So everybody was like, oh, you have to intern. So what I did, I was like looking at who were my favorite artists at the time. And then, known to me, like most of them were signed to Island Def Jam without me realizing it at the time that they were all there, from the hip hop side on Def Jam, because of my brother, I was huge Wu-Tang fan, Nas, so they were there, iconic artists. And then on the, on the island, which is pop and rock, the Killers and, Time of the Bravery and Fall Out Boy and all these amazing artists that I, personally love. And obviously Bob Marley, a big influence in my life, like learn all about Island Records. So I was like, oh my God, this is perfect. I want to go work at Island Def Jam. So I like figured out how to like apply for an internship. I applied it for a summer internship and I got it. And at the time, digital marketing was a very new thing, like I said, MySpace was just starting out, and it was actually the department that I was picked for. It was called New Media, which now is digital marketing. But New Media back then, they were trying to figure it out. So they gave me the internship for the New Media digital intern, and yeah, I guess as they say, the rest is history.
It's really fascinating. Do you think it's funny even talking about MySpace nowadays with how music marketing has like grown exponentially? You're just like, oh my God, that seems so obsolete at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. Like MySpace, and I was talking about this with some of my interns now. The other day we had an intern, meeting just to like catch up, and I was telling them, when MySpace started, all of these other platforms started. Like you guys probably don't know, but like High Five and iMeme, and there was all these kind of platforms where everybody was trying to like do their thing. And it's amazing how it evolved so much from MySpace to Facebook to Instagram, but then the one constant has always been YouTube. People kind of forget about YouTube being a social platform, but it really is where everybody's uploading their own content, and you're getting viewers from fans alike. So it's the platform has always been there, and the same concept has kind of always been there, but just evolved as far as like the type of content and the length and the attention span of people. And now there's so much more content to consume, and it's a lot easier for anybody to just upload whatever they want. Whether you're a musician or just a content creator. So it's so interesting to see the transition. I actually got a screenshot on my Time Hop when we first created the Def Jam Twitter. So to see like even the logos, how they changed, and the evolution of the logos of the companies, Twitter, and then it had Vine, and then Vine went away. so yeah, it's really fun to see like that whole transition. And I mean, now we're marketing artists, we rely so heavily on social media, especially during the last year, with the pandemic and everything. That has been really like our only tool to communicate with fans. It's been really cool to see that, there's this platform that people have created that has grown into such an easy tool for musicians to communicate with fans and get their music out there. If we didn't have social media during this past year, it would have been a lot different, right? So it's crazy to see the evolution for sure.
Now, like with the last year and everything, ever since COVID started, how hard has that like really made it for you as someone in the music industry trying to market and everything like that?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely use social media as a tool on everything that we do with our artists. So, not everybody is good at social media and everybody loves it, but it is a tool that is out there. So we always try to maximize it, and each artist is always different on how they want to use it. But I always see it as a tool that it's like, here's a platform that I can get everything out that I need people to hear. I just need to find the audience for it. And I know the audience is out there, right? Like, it's kind of like fish where the fish are. So that's kind of like finding what's the right platform for the artist, what fits for their, their brand, their demographic, their audience. But yeah, this past year, obviously it was also more this past year about competing for attention, like the time that people had, because, with people being at home, there were more people that were like playing video games or watching movies like Netflix. I was competing with Netflix, or I was competing with, Fortnite or, Twitch to get people's attentions, instead of like having that time to listen to music and watch music videos. Oh, they might have been watching Netflix. So it's more really about like competing now with other things that are entertaining people, especially during the last year where people were just at home. You know, we lost the commute that people had. That's where they listened to music on the drive to work or on the drive to school, or like working out at the gym. You know, so many gyms were closed that we lost that hour. People were working out and just listening to music. So it was about finding ways to kind of like compete with those things that were kind of taken away, but still being relevant. So it was, you know, it was challenging, but also at the same time fun, just to try to find new ways. It's like, okay, well, we know that they're not listening to my playlist because they're not working out at the gym. How can we reach out to them in a different way? And just, you know, maybe it's through, you know, Twitch or TikTok, or they're doing at-home workouts. So how do we get on those? You know, so just finding new ways to figure out how to market the music.
Yeah, I mean, that seems like definitely a learning curve, especially with everything. So what do you think your day-to-day looked like before COVID versus what it looks like now? Like, do you want to give us like a rundown of what you would do in a day at your job?
Yeah. Well, before COVID, I kind of planned my week, you know, especially being in LA, that, you know, I started in New York and then transitioned to LA. So here, you know, everything sort of evolves around traffic and how long it's going to take you to get from A to B. So that's kind of how I plan my weeks, where like, it was like, you know, 2 days a week, those are my meeting days where I'm like getting in the car, driving to meet, you know, go to labels, or, you know, visiting artists, or doing things that where you have to get in your car and go versus being in the office. So my day to day, you know, it was like Mondays is like our Monday meeting with, you know, the team, and just kind of see like, what do we have coming up? What are we working on? Kind of status report of where everybody's at. And then now that, I mean, COVID was definitely just working at home, obviously. You know, a lot of Zoom calls, a lot of video chats, a lot of phone calls, you know, like everybody else that had to do adjust this past year. But now here in LA, things are reopening again. So like now I'm back at the office. And my day-to-day, you know, it varies. Like, you know, this week I have 2 photo shoots. Yesterday we had a sold out show. So yesterday my day was like revolved around the show, making sure everything was set that needed to happen, you know, like everybody that used to go in has their ticket, and, you know, it's sold out, so there's no wiggle room there. You know, and then we had a great show last night. So then today is like, okay, great. I'll just find the photos and the footage, the content that we shot last night, and get it out there. So that was a big part of my day today, you know, making sure we got all the content out there about the show and all of that. And then, yeah, tomorrow there's a video shoot, Friday there's a photo shoot. So every day is a little bit different, which is one of the things that I personally love. You know, because every day, like, either we're at the office or we're like out doing some content creation, or at the studio. You know, like after our interview today, I'm heading to the studio to listen to some mixes and see how they're sounding. So that's what I love about my day-to-day. It's always different.
It's really exciting though, because you're always changing it up. So there's never anything boring really going on. I mean, there probably are a little bit of maybe boring things happening, but you know, that's every job. So,
Yeah.
so since you said you were in New York and then you moved to LA, do you think that you have to be in a particular place to break into music marketing and stuff, especially depending on what genre of music or whatever?
Yeah, I don't think to start out, like, it's definitely easier if you are in one of the main music cities, you know, New York, LA, Miami, Nashville, and Atlanta. That's definitely a lot easier, obviously, because you'll have more musicians and more industry people. But if you're trying to do music marketing, since most of music marketing today is digital anyway, you can kind of do it from everywhere. You know, you really need a laptop and Wi-Fi to be able to do it. Of course, it's always nice to do it in person, but if anything we learned from this past year is that all you really do need is laptop and internet to be able to get things done. You know, we were able to get everything done that we needed to last year. And I know a lot of friends that did the same as well, just like working from home. So you don't necessarily have to be in the location. It definitely does help, especially now that things are opening up. You know, it's easier to network and go to events and go to concerts and meet people that way that you're gonna, you know, form relationships with and work with. But, you know, like something that we do is we have an internship program where, you know, even before COVID, you could do the internship remotely if you wanted to, because I know there's a lot of great people that might be going to universities that necessarily can't do like a 3 or 6 month, whatever length of the internship program is in New York or LA. So it's just easier to do it remotely, and you're still learning and doing everything the same way, just not in person. So I think, you know, it's definitely doable.
Okay, cool. Yeah, 'cause as somebody who's based in Chicago, I was always curious about that, and especially in any big creative field like that. It's like, oh, do I need to pack up my bags and move out to LA right now, kind of deal. But honestly, it seems like you're doing a great job and very successful because you said you already started your own agency, right?
Yeah.
JV. So tell us about how you had your aha moment, where how that came about, bringing this to
Yeah.
life.
Yeah, so it was, I don't think I actually had that moment. It just it all happened so fast. What had happened is, Island Def Jam was one big label, and then as you'll learn, labels always do reshuffling. It's owned by Universal Music Group, so it's a bigger company. So they reshuffle where they decided to split Island and Def Jam into two separate labels. And then so it was kind of like they also move the roster around. So it was just kind of happened so fast where it was some of the artists I had worked with for a long time, they were now at different labels, and they had like singles or albums or something coming out. And just as a friend, they reached out like, hey Jazz, my single comes out next week, and I don't know, like if we have the Shazam campaign, can you like help out, or like can you look at this and help out, or like love your opinion, or and then before I knew it, I was kind of just helping out friends, and it was like 10 of them. So then I was like, oh, this is fun, So I just like enjoyed that I was able to help them when they needed the help. Just like a pair of extra hands that like they knew they could trust, and they knew that I knew what I was doing. So it was just kind of like, here, help me with this, and I can kind of take it off their hands and just help them out because they had obviously other stuff going on. So before I knew it, I was doing it for like 10 artists, and it was just one of like, oh, okay, I can like do this like on my own. And I've always been very entrepreneurial, like even before working at Def Jam, and along the way as well. So it was one of those things that I was like, oh, well, let me just give this a try. So yeah, so I kind of started JV Agency, JV over initial. So it wasn't like a lot of thought put behind it. It was just like JV Agency, cool, let's run with this. And yeah, I was doing it for a bunch of artists, and ever since, that was 2015 now. So ever since every artist that I work with is always by referral. People that I've worked with along the way, labels, management companies, that they're always like, we have good relationships, and people are thankfully happy with the work that we do, and they keep coming back to us. So yeah, so that's kind of how it all started. And yeah, it happened really fast that I didn't really have like a business plan or anything like that. I was just like, let me run with it and kind of see what happens.
Wow, so I didn't mean to
Go
interrupt
ahead,
you.
go ahead, Jack, go.
I was just gonna say that's crazy. Yeah. Sorry, not to go back or anything, but you said that in college and stuff, where you complete your master's program, they actually had like a student run label basically.
Yeah. Yeah, they had a student-run record label, and the releases were actually either from the students or from the faculty. The faculty were more on the classical music side of things. So obviously the marketing on that is a little bit different than what I do today, but it was a good learning experience of just like putting together a project, right? Like having delivery deadlines and making sure you have all the assets and making sure everything's registered where it needs to be registered, and everybody kind of knows what's going on. So it was really good learning experience for that. Just kind of putting like project managing really. And same with the student projects, obviously students have, all the stuff going on with classes, and if they're trying to finish an album, and we put in a concert, and it was for charity, and, we had a fashion show tag into it. So we had the band play. So it was like all these like moving parts, which to me, like looking back at it now, it was such a great learning experience and a lot of fun, because I do a lot of events now. We do listening parties and video premiere parties, and we have all these moving parts at the same time. So yeah, so that was really great.
And that was a part of your master's program, correct?
Yeah.
Now I know obviously the music industry is a difficult one to get into. Would you say like getting your master's degree, is that necessary to get in the music industry, or do you think you can make it without that?
I definitely think you can make it without it. And also same with that, like a bachelor's, definitely, I would say definitely go to school if that's the path for you. School's not for everybody. Like I like going to school, and I enjoyed it, and I had good grades, and it was easy for me to get good grades. I know that's not the case for everybody. And I definitely know a lot of people that have made it in the music industry and they don't have any, they only have their high school degree or whatnot, or their bachelor's. So it goes both ways in the music industry. I think going to college definitely just helps you become, obviously there's like procedures and things like that need to happen. So that I think that does prepare you for the real world, where you do have deadlines and you have to like answer to somebody, whether it's your boss or yourself or a client. Which you do the same at college by turning in papers and having quizzes and all that kind of stuff. So I definitely think it prepares you just to be out in the real world a little bit better. But I also do know that school is not for everybody. I mean, look at somebody like Elon Musk, so yeah, so it's definitely not for everybody. So I understand that. And obviously too, like college being so expensive and everything that goes on with that, what's going on with now. So for myself, it helped me, and I'm glad I did it. It definitely got me to where I am today. But I also know now too, and not knowing this back then, or maybe it wasn't as accessible back then, like, now it's so easy to reach out to anybody via LinkedIn or Instagram or any kind of platform, where before that wasn't really an option either. So now it's like, if you really want to get your foot in the door somewhere, it's a lot easier to like reach out to somebody on LinkedIn and say like, hey, I really admire what you do for work. I'd love to learn more about it. Can I have like an informational interview? And most people are happy to do those sort of things. Whereas before it was probably a little bit harder to be able to get a hold of somebody at a label or somewhere that you were looking to work at.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many layers to it all, especially with today and how hard it is to really kind of like break into things, or what people think is hard to break into certain industries, because there's just like this stigma around like higher education in general.
Yeah.
I guess backtracking a little bit, and in that same realm, we were talking about you after college. What was your experience kind of like going into the real job world after your internship? Did you have any struggles? Were there any hurdles that you didn't think you were going to encounter? Like, if you could talk to yourself back then and be like, hey, watch out for this thing, I had no idea that was ever going to happen to me, what would you tell yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I think, I think for me, I was definitely one of the lucky ones that like even my friends that like when I graduated, I had a job waiting for me. Like that's obviously not the case for everybody, especially, in today's environment. So I was lucky to have that, kind of like security, if you will, after graduating. I would say a lot of the things that I would say like watch out for are things that I learned along in the job that college didn't teach me, and they probably don't teach today. And it was just like the day-to-day dynamics of working with a lot of people and working with a lot of people that are all different to you and to each other. Like you kind of get a little bit of that when, in college, when you're doing maybe like group projects and things like that, but it's obviously different when like your job depends on it. And like nobody wants to get fired or mess up or anything, especially when you're starting out. So just learning how to like work with other people. I think that I wish colleges kind of prepare you for that a little bit more. Just different personalities, especially in music. Obviously artists have big personalities. So I don't think anything but experience could prepare anybody for that. But yeah, definitely just being more aware of like, kind of what you're going into, even with my program that I did, while I did learn a lot, there was still a lot that I had to learn on the job specific, especially because I do digital marketing, which is something that's new and always evolving and ever changing. So I'm always learning new things, even as I go, just because they're brand new things that, that are existing with technology. So it's kind of like was things that colleges probably don't teach you, but maybe they should somehow figure it out to teach, to teach people to go into the real world. Is that always, like when you're in class, everything's kind of like structured, here's your syllabus, everything, is kind of spelled out for you. It's not like that in the real world. So just like being aware of that, I think that would be helpful for anybody.
Yeah, that's some pretty solid advice. There are just so many different kinds of personalities out there. You don't know what you're going to run into, So I guess going with a lot of the people that you've worked with, you probably get this question a lot, but have you ever had like this super starstruck moment when you're like with certain artists, or have you ever had like a clash with an artist that you thought would work differently?
Yeah, I've been lucky not to have that like superstar, like, oh my God, like I can't speak moment. So I've been lucky enough to have that. I think too, just because working with them now for so long, it's just like, you know, at the end of the day, they are just like you and me, the regular people, you know, they're just super talented at something. Yeah, I think I would have that moment though. The one person that I haven't met that if I would meet, it probably happened to me is Paul McCartney. I feel like I would be like, I don't know what to say or do. But it hasn't happened yet. But yeah, so, and then, yeah, I mean, artists, you know, I've been lucky that every artist that I've worked with, they've been, you know, they understand that I'm there to do a job. And that job is really to help them. So we haven't had like a clash or anything like that. Obviously people have bad days and things like that. But all the artists that I work with, you know, luckily they're respectful and they understand, or like, I get it if they're having a bad day. It's like, okay, it's not the right time to bring bad news, you know, like, or, you know, things like that. So we kind of adjust. So yeah, so I've been lucky. I don't have any crazy stories. I'm trying to think. Yeah, I don't have any crazy stories of like artists, you know, being rude or anything like that. You know, I've been lucky that all the artists that I've worked with, they're always very kind and very thankful. Like they get it. Like, you know, it takes a whole army of people to make these superstars. You know, it's not just one person, it's not one thing that makes it happen. It's a whole team behind the scenes, you know, like hundreds and hundreds of people that help the artists, you know, show like as great as they do when, you know, when the audience is watching. So whether it's a small thing as like, you know, fixing a wardrobe right before going on stage, or like a huge thing is making sure all the sound is working the way it's supposed to, you know, there's a whole team behind it. And, you know, all the artists that I work with, like, know that without this whole team, none of this would be possible the way it is. So we've been lucky to like be able to have artists that appreciate that.
Yeah. Have you had like a highlight moment where you were like, I'm so proud to be a part of this team? Like you were watching an artist, like, wow, I'm so cool, like to be in this world kind of thing.
Yeah, I've had a few of those throughout my career, which has been really cool. You know, every time that I'm on like, you know, the side of the stage and then I look at the crowd and I see the fans singing back the words to the audience, I'm like, oh my God, just a few months ago or however long ago, they didn't know this song and now they literally know every single lyric to this song. And that's something that I helped create, you know? So like that, to me, watching fans, like that's awesome. I also love when fans like DM the artist and say like, oh, your song really helped me, you know, come up to my parents, or help me get through a dark time, or help me do something that I was like scared or afraid or whatever, you know, it is to do. Like, I love seeing those messages. I think that's great that like we're able to make that connection. You know, and, you know, some of the fun moments for me was I got to see Leonard Cohen at Coachella. And as he was performing, you know, like the sunset was happening, the palm trees, and it was just like such a surreal moment of like, this is like so cool that I get to be here and witness this and be a part of this moment. So I've had a lot of moments like that where I'm like, wow, this is so amazing, you know? So I've been lucky to have a lot of opportunities like that, where like not a lot of my, you know, my peers or friends or anybody would get to experience. So that's something that like I always hold dear, that like I'm very lucky to be able to like experience those kind of moments.
Now, working like having your own company and everything like that, what you've been saying, you have to juggle a bunch of different things at once, it feels like. Is that sometimes overwhelming, or is there any like ways you deal with help alleviate the stress, stuff like that?
Yeah, I definitely yeah, running a company, no matter how big or small, you're definitely wearing lots of hats because everything kind of comes back down to you. You're like the main responsible person for not only the clients, the artists, but the employees and everybody that surrounds you. So it's a lot of hats. I definitely have a system. One of the things that I learned from Richard Branson, which is one of the people that I admire as an entrepreneur, and he created Virgin Records. And obviously, I'm sure you guys know a lot about him. And, you know, what he just accomplished this past weekend was amazing. Going to space, you know, as not a, you know, NASA trained astronaut. So I think that that's great. But one of the things that he's always said is like, hire your weaknesses. So that's something that I do. Like, you know, like I know I'm not great at like accounting. So I make sure I have a team that can do that for me so I don't have to worry about it. So I definitely, you know, have a great team that helps me like manage and juggle everything. And because we do have so many things going on at the same time, you know, like I said, even this week alone, it's like video shoot, photo shoot, sold out show. Those are like 3 huge things going on that they all need to go perfect. Otherwise, something's going to go wrong. So having a team to help manage all of that, also like time management is something that you have to kind of stay on top of. You don't want to waste your time on doing something that's not going to give you results, or doing something that like is not productive at the end of the day. So definitely having those things, and everybody's different how like what works for you. Some people like to make handwritten lists, some people are all about digital, some people need to block out their calendar. So just kind of finding what really works for you that makes you like, it keeps you productive. That's kind of like the best way to do it. And that could go for like, in school too. Like if you have all these deadlines of papers and quizzes and tests, and it's like, what's the best way that you study? It's kind of the same idea.
Yeah, I mean, those are solid ideas, definitely. I'm really interested in how you manage it, and even in times of failure, especially like what keeps you inspired, like what keeps you really going if things aren't like going exactly as planned.
Yeah, there's always especially when you're doing things like maybe live, that like something could go wrong, right? That's just life. So I think like what I do is like, or kind of have always worked is like, I don't see it as like failure. I just like, if I need to try things, otherwise I'll regret not trying them just to see the outcome, like whether the outcome is good or bad. Like I'm happy that I at least like gave it the effort, like I gave it my best effort, I put everything out there and I tried it. So I'm hoping that it turns out great, but there's sometimes there are things that you just can't control. Like, last year, I think that took us all by surprise, right? Nobody envisioned anything close to what happened last year, that we were just like going to be stuck at home. So it's like, that was totally out of my control, but it was like, okay, what can I do about it? Well, I can sit here and be sad and upset about it, or I can try new things to continue and, move my artists forward and grow the company. And that's what we did. We tried things, and some things worked great for some artists and some things didn't. And, at the end of the day, it's like, at least we tried it. We know what works, we know what doesn't. So yeah, I don't necessarily I don't like think of it as like failures. I just think it's like, we're trying things and we're seeing what works and what doesn't. And if something doesn't work, yeah, I don't think it's a failure. I just think it's like a learning experience. And now we know. And we're not like wondering like, oh, what if we've done it this way, well, we did it that way. No, we have an answer, either way, whether it's good or bad.
Yeah, I mean, just don't take it too much to heart, like we're separate kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's total trial and error. Yeah, it's trial and error. I can definitely see that. But I guess moving forward with your career, you have your own business. Where do you see yourself growing in your career even at this point? Like, do you feel like you're like, oh gosh, I have my own thing, what am I going to do next?
I get that question a lot. Kind of like, I only really had the company for about 6 years now, so it seems like a long time, but in the grand scheme of things, it's not. So I like to continue just growing the company. When I started, it was just me and just kind of like trying to figure it out. And then, as I got busier, I hired assistants and hired social media managers and hire content creators and, publicists, and just kind of like keep growing it. That's kind of where I see it, just continue to grow it. And, I've also along the way gotten involved in other things that I necessarily never would have thought that I would. Like I did something in the sports world, which I don't know anything about sports, but that was really fun and exciting and challenging because it was so new and a topic that I've never really been into sports. So it was like, oh, this is totally different. So continue to grow in different aspects, even, as the state of the industry kind of changed last year, we grew more into like the influencer part of our business, which, influencers are so important now within the music industry. But, we grew that as well. So just continue to grow, find new ways to still do what we love, everything time back to music. But just continue to grow. I definitely see that as something that is our path. I think I always love discovering new artists. So you never know, like I might find a new artist tomorrow that I'm be like, okay, I'm gonna take this artist all the way. So that's always something that I'm always open to as well.
You said you started your company about 6 years ago. Leaving your job and deciding to start your own thing, was that scary at first? Do you have fear going into that, or what?
I wasn't really scared because I was very you know, like something in the music industry, it's like there's always going to be labels there or some. I always in my head is like, okay, like I said, I wasn't afraid to fail. Like I wanted to try it and see what would happen. And I always thought like if it doesn't work out for whatever reason, I can always go back to another label. I can always go to a management company, or I can go to like a YouTube or an Instagram, or you know, any of those companies that I've always worked with. So I wasn't thinking of it like, oh my God, I'm scared what's going to happen. It was just kind of like, okay, this is kind of working. It has its own momentum. Let's try it out. If it works, cool, and we go with it. And that's kind of how I've been. Like I just kind of go with things and see like if this path is working, continue down that path. If that, you know, if we have like hit a bump in the road, it's like, okay, let's figure out how to like move past it and move forward. So yes, I wasn't really scared. I didn't give it much thought in that way, where it was like, oh, like this is it, or you know, or everything's gonna fall apart. So it was just more of like, let's go and try it out. I always, like I said, I've always been like, if you don't try it, you'll regret not even trying it. And I do that with everything, even just like skydiving or you know, anything that I do. It's just like, let's give it a try and see. Otherwise, I feel like I'll regret not even giving it a try.
Just like keeping your mind open to new possibilities and new ideas and everything like that. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Because it's just like, you know, there's so many restrictions in the world and what we do, that it's just like being open-minded and just willing to try something just to see if it's something that you would be comfortable with. It's really the only way to really know. So I've been able to do that along the way.
Was there ever an opportunity that you feel like you missed out on, or were you always just a go-getter? You always just went after anything?
Yeah, I'm pretty much a go-getter, for sure. So if it's something that I feel like, okay, this is an opportunity that I could somehow, you know, like, you know, I would be into it or whatever, like I'm forward all the way. Yeah, I don't look back at things and see like, oh, that was a missed opportunity. It was just more like, you know, everything kind of happens for a reason, and it's been that way my entire life. You know, even on the personal side, on the business side, it's just like everything just happens for a reason, whatever that reason is. I don't know, but that's kind of how I look at it. You know, if something doesn't work out, well, it wasn't meant to be, and that's okay. Something else will happen instead of it. So, you know, that's kind of my mindset towards it.
No, it's really helpful. I mean, you got to like marry that passion with that like actual action too, you know? So really putting yourself out there. So I do want to ask personal questions, since you are obviously in the music industry. I just am really curious about what your favorite artists are that you actually listen to. Maybe not necessarily like who you work with, but I'm just curious, like who would be like a dream artist that you would want to work with, maybe?
Oh, well, some of the artists that I do listen to that I love, like love Taylor Swift, you know, so always have. So I love her. I love how she puts herself out there. Obviously, not only like lyrically and as a musician, but also just her marketing and her branding. You know, she's very involved in that. So yeah, I think she would also be just really fun to work with, just because she, you know, she's such a powerful woman in our industry that I think that would be really fun and exciting. Same goes with like Lady Gaga. I think her, you know, her visuals are great, the way she conducts herself, all the things that she's involved in. I think, you know, I like her as an artist, but I also love what she does as a musician and marketing herself and her brand. So those two women I think would be great to work with. But yeah, and as far as who I listen to, you know, I listen to a little bit of everything, you know, like I said, anything from Taylor Swift to like, I don't know, Green Day. So just all over the range of things. You know, I'm always down for new music, no real genre. I just listen to a little bit of everything.
That's awesome. Because I know Taylor Swift has that crazy marketing thing lately with her like just dropping albums out of nowhere, or like the marketing for it, and like there's like coding in it, and then you figure out, yeah, her team's incredible. Whatever. Doing it right.
Yeah, she's great, and she's really fun to watch. Like, you know, me as like on the marketing side of it, I watch it and I'm like, oh, this is interesting. And there's only a few artists in the world that can do the marketing the way she does it. So it's always about like, obviously that works for her because of who she is and how big she is, but it's like, how can we take that and apply it to up and coming artists or things like that, you know, obviously they wouldn't work the same way, but maybe portions or hints of it could work in a certain way. So that's what I kind of always look at whenever there's a new release from big artists like her, just saying how, like, what can we learn from it, you know?
Yeah, totally. So I guess as a quick wrap up, what would be like a good 2-sentence bit of advice that you would give to interns that, like, when you were an intern? Like, what would you tell them as like their whole career journey ahead of them?
Yeah, something that I think is helpful to anybody, whether an intern or assistant or kind of starting out, just always be confident on like what you know. Like everybody is knowledgeable about something, whether that's marketing, digital marketing, social media, music, like, if you have a good ear in art, like whatever that is, like always be confident about that whenever you're like going into meetings or going into anything where you're speaking up and like having your voice heard. I think that's super helpful. Like people get a little shy or a little nervous and it's like, should I say something? Should I not say something? But like if you're confident about it and you know what you're talking about, like please go for it. Like we want to hear your opinion. So I think that's really important. So just be confident, be as knowledgeable as possible on the topic so you're prepared. I think everybody, like, especially once you start like working with other people, working in the industry, like the more prepared you are, the better, on whatever topic it is, just because you'll get more respect and people will admire that you're coming to the table with something to say, and not just kind of sitting there being quiet and just, just always having an opinion. It's good to have that and like voice it.
Wow, yeah. You basically summed it up right there. Thank you so much. Would you like to like plug any of your like social media or anything?
Sure, yeah. So everybody can find JV agencies at JV Agency on all the platforms, and my personal one is at DJ Jazzy. If anybody has any questions or anything or any advice, feel free to DM me. I always answer everybody. So yeah.
No, thank you so much for joining us and chatting about your career and everything. We learned a lot, and I feel like this will be really helpful for the world of interns, especially the MAP audience. But yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me. This was fun.
No problem. All right. So I think that's going to be the end of our episode of Have a Map this time around. So check us back next week. We're going to have awesome guests in the future, just like Jazmine that we have right here right now. So yeah, thank you guys so much. And you guys have a good rest of your day.